GDPR. Please welcome Mark to the stage.
Okay. Thank you. It's kind. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for receiving me today. I've been asked to come, as Matt said, to talk about Principle 6 of GDPR. I was in a meeting yesterday with quite a large insurance company, and we were doing a presentation specifically on GDPR. And I asked them what we would think are some very simple, basic questions, and quite a lot of the people in the room didn't actually know the truth. They had got a lot of myths about GDPR. So what I'm going to do today is just keep it a bit low-key and not assume everyone knows everything, because there is, as I say, a lot of myths out there. So, Principle 6, personal information must be secured. Personal data, and business data to be fair, should be processed in a manner that ensures appropriate security of personal data is protected. One thing that we found on our journey within GDPR, talking to organisations from large to small, is people don't actually realise how much of their personal data is out there. From as simple as we go to the larger stores now, and they will say to us, as opposed to printing your receipt off, should we send it to you electronically, take your email address? That information is then retained, and that is then processed by numerous processors. So that just gives you just one example by simply going to the Bowling shopping centre down the road and just making a purchase. So where would a breach potentially come from? It can come from hacking, which has obviously been spoken about previous. Viruses, malware, now very prevalent with ransomware. Relaxed updates on policies and so forth. We find when we talk to organisations, and even large organisations in open plan offices, we still see on the computers, under the screens, we actually see password. It still happens today. We just find it really, really shocking, but it's as easy as that for someone to just pop in. You know, the person that's walking around doing the teas, the coffees, maybe the cleaners at the night when we've all gone home. How do we know that they're the cleaners? How do we know that they haven't been given a pass card and there's someone looking to compromise your organisation? Phishing scams, intruders stealing and damaging data, free Wi-Fi. I'll come on to that in a bit. I've got a good question on that. Inadequate training of staff. One of the things I will say is the utmost importance for all organisations is to actually train your staff. That's from the junior that's George organisation right up to the CEO. Everyone has got to understand the importance of data and the importance of GDPR. You've got to have a culture within organisations that if someone inadvertently was to open a malware or to click onto a website that's come through that they weren't surfing, at the end of the day, they need to have the environment that they can put the hand up, go to an individual that has already been made aware of to say, I've got a problem. That doesn't necessarily mean in IT with all organisations, but they have able to go to someone and not fear that they're going to get a written warning or even worse, lose their jobs. So I'll whiz on back down this again. So unencrypted devices away from premises. We will talk about that again in a short while about actual people's hardware and receiving business data. Shoulder surfing, trains, buses. I leave here, I go straight down to London. I'll have to go on the dreaded tube. The amount of time I see people that are sat with their iPads open or whatever, and they've got sensitive data, even on the train down, and they're having conversations, and you can hear what's going on. You're hearing people's private business information because you don't know who's in a carriage. Poor access and to access controls to your physically to your computer. Social engineering. Social engineering is becoming more prevalent now. It's where organisations will... Does anyone know what social engineering is before I start rattling? Yes? No? Okay. So social engineering is something that organisations are using more and more. So we're not necessarily just going straight into the hacking, it's just befriending someone. DDoS. I'm going to assume most of you, but may not everyone, knows what a DDoS attack is. So the question is, do you all know what DDoS is? Is there anyone that doesn't know what a DDoS attack is? Okay, that's different from yesterday then. So a DDoS is a type of DOS attack where a multiple of compromised systems are used to obviously to infect with a Trojan and will infect and attack a single system to take it down. So a banking system, a large corporation. And this is a major issue with organised crime. So DDoS, how will it occur? I mentioned earlier about free Wi-Fi. Free Wi-Fi. How many of you use free Wi-Fi when you're out and about? Yeah? Okay. How many of you have got VPN system on your computer? 1, 2. Oh, more. 50%. So the people that haven't, a VPN. So a VPN is a way of protecting your system. It's, in effect, an encryption that will go around the traffic you're using on the free Wi-Fi. What that does is, in effect, you're on a motorway, you can drive at 50 miles an hour, you can drive 100 miles an hour, but you're just in that lane alone. And it's protecting the data that you're sending and receiving through emails. When you go on a free Wi-Fi, you're not sure if that infrastructure is secure. So this is a way that you will protect it, because that is how so many organisations get hacked, their data is compromised, or they're used in DDoS attacks. Okay, who allows employees to receive data on their personal devices? They may have taken a long weekend, so they've taken Saturday, Sunday, Monday off, and there's just a quick job they need to do, and they receive emails on their personal devices. Is that something that happens? Okay. That's an issue with GDPR, because an individual's personal device is their device. The company has lost control of that business or personal data that is now sat on that employee's piece of hardware, be it their mobile phone, be it their laptop, be it their iPad. They do with that what they want, and the chances are most individuals don't and won't have the same level of cyber security on their personal device. One, because they just can't afford it, or two, because it won't happen, it doesn't matter. But with GDPR, if that information is breached, then the fines potentially can kick in. Here's a little bit of information here in reference passwords, how easy they are to crack. You can see the characters there. As an organisation, we advise for passwords. We would advise that you have at least 22 characters, which most people in businesses tend to have somewhere between 6 and 8. So it's a considerable larger amount of characters. So tips for stronger ways of having better passwords. As you can see here, we've got some examples of first place where you lived, the number of the house, the street, how much you paid, and then you change using symbols to replicate letters and numbers. Basic cyber security. All corporations, organisations would have the following. So they use strong firewalls, up-to-date patching. Patching is something that is quite commonly where organisations can obtain a breach. The situation with Equifax, their issue was one server wasn't up-to-date patched. So was TalkTalk, same again. They bought a business that wasn't patched up-to-date. All our infrastructure for our business is, the whole solutions are provided by ProBrand. They take care of all of our patching. We don't have to worry about that. Using strong passwords. But above all, it's about protecting your system from viruses and from malware. So from the audience I'm seeing in the room, obviously you would all understand what a virus is, how a virus works. For the ones that don't, as you can see, a virus is something that attaches itself to a file or a program, and once it's in that infrastructure or program, it will then execute itself, and then what it will do then, the virus will replicate itself, and it will start running around, hiding behind PCB boards, etc. That's when the problems will start within your infrastructure. Your system will slow down, potentially will take your data, harvest your data, or you then have other issues with malware. So malware, some people have seen these not so nice pop up on your screen. You will notice then that your browser will change its look. All of a sudden, strange information will come on your screen. Your systems, it will turn your firewall off. It can slow your system down, and new icons can come up on the system. So malware is something, what I've seen in the past 12 months, lots of people saying organizations are buying Bitcoin when they have a malware issue to get the issue away. That is not the solution. Just because you pay them, don't think they're going to give you that information back. They are criminals, and that is what they are. So don't think that they're nice guys, because they're not. They're not going to agree to what they're telling you. So improve security. What can we do? Always consider both physical and cyber security. We were at a medical presentation about 4 weeks ago. And in this was a different range of organisations, from large to small. And we were shocked to find that some organisations were still telling us they had people's medical information in index cards, and it was kept in the main office and it wasn't locked away. There would be a breach from GDPR. GDPR isn't just about cyber and computers, it's about documents, it's about your notebooks, it's this type of information. So you need to be, back to what we're saying here, it's about your physical security as well, ensuring information, its keys, locked away. Key holders. This is an information, have an infrastructure. We would advise also to actually undertake a situation that you've come under attack. Actually say, nominate an individual, they've lost their laptop, they've lost their mobile phone. It happens, it's not that they're silly, it's just it's fallen out their pocket, or they're rushing and left it on a train, or unfortunately their car has been stolen or whatever. Put it to the test. Put a process in place and do a risk analysis and see if your systems work, because what you write down that looks all pretty, when you put it into that practice, there will be flaws, and it's better to have a flaw when it's not a real attack or not a real loss or a breach. Make sure that you do backups. That is regular. You must do backups at least once a day. That is what we would say. Some organisations, depending on how big their data is, they would do backups more regularly than that. As our organisation, every day, everything is backed up, and it's backed up securely to a remote location. Have your passwords. Strong passwords, we've already said. Continually change your passwords. Don't keep the same passwords. Don't use the same password for everything, because again, you're going to have issues. Antiviruses, make sure they're up to date, because that is quite often a situation, and so are your firewalls. And back again, staff training. I cannot push so much more about staff training. In the meeting, presentation we had yesterday with this insurance company, one of the key things with an organisation you would think would know a lot about GDPR, staff training was very, very weak. Encrypted. So have sophisticated attacks are there. Have your hardware encrypted. The way that the hackers are now, you see, back in the day there was like a misspelled document, and you could see that it was not Lloyds Bank, or it wasn't TSB, or it wasn't the estate agents that's selling your home or whatever. They're sophisticated individuals now. So one of the ways that you can protect your information is what happens is they will collect the information, your data from your cash account. They will harvest that of the recent information that you've used through your laptop, through your keyboard. They will then potentially reckon what were your recently used information. So your passwords, it could be your bank accounts, it could be certain documents you're going into, a presentation you're working on, a deal you're working on. So one of the things that modern laptops and computers can have is you can enable something called BitLocker. BitLocker is a way of that extra security on your device, so it's when it's away from the office. Cloud security. Lots of organisations now have moved to the cloud. It's a very efficient way for organisations to grow and when they're increasing their data. Again, for the people who in the room that may not know how cloud works, if you imagine you've got a physical box, and within that box you could have 10, 20, 4, depending on the size of data, all sharing within that box. So what we would say is the organisation that you are using to provide your cloud solution, make sure that your box that is in that cloud is secure, that you can't get infected by another organisation within the box that possibly hasn't got the same protocols, the same high quality of security, cyber security as yourself, because you could be very strong, but because your data is in effect in the back office, that's where it could get compromised. So MAPS as an organisation, we provide a two-phase solution. If anyone would want to talk to us, basically what we would do, we would come and see you. We would provide something called a data protection impact assessment, a DPAA, and a gap analysis. We would then provide you with the documents to see where your organisations are strong or weak. And then phase two, once that has been completed, what we would do is then we would come into your organisation, identify the critical issues, the high and the medium. There is never such a thing as low data out there. All data is important. And then what we would do then, it was then put processes in place, procedures in place, and as I say, back to the game, staff training. That is something that is fundamental in all that we do, is to make staff aware the issues of GDPR, that, oh, it doesn't matter attitude can cost the business. That isn't me, that's head of GDPR. He's the guy you would contact, not me. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions, guys, for Nigel? Gentleman at the back there. Just 1 second.
Considering passwords.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the larger the alphabet you use and the longer the password, the harder it is to brute force the thing.
Yes.
However, you did not mention one-time passwords at all in that. Now, to my mind, instead of having a fantastically long password that which changes all the time, which people are likely to forget and write down whatever your policy says, surely it's better to have, if it's really, really, really critical stuff, like, for example, your online banking system, a one-time passcode, because people can't write those down by definition.
Yeah, I would agree with that totally, but most organisations don't actually use those kind of systems. We work with Proband. We've had discussions. Most organisations will only use standard processes. So that's why I've delivered to the masses, but what you say is totally correct. Anybody else?
What's your opinion on password management, things like LastPass or other programs of that nature?
We would agree with using different solutions. Our organisation has just actually processed to moving into a solution where, like the gentleman just said there, where the passwords are continually changing. We get involved in another part of our business which gets involved with government, holding government data. And that is something that we've moved. We've done a risk analysis of our business, just as if we didn't know anything about GDPR and didn't know anything about cyber, and that was something that we've actually looked at and providing a solution with a different software.
So do you think, sorry, just to clarify, do you think that they're a good thing?
Yes.
Or are they another element of, you could lose all your passwords in one go, potentially?
Right, so it's like anything, everything potentially has an issue. You know, nothing is technology, nothing will be I can't guarantee that. No. Talk to these guys, they might be able to help you there, but we as an organisation, we have just been speaking to Program about moving to a solution that is a one password that continually changes. But that is not across everything, just on certain pieces of access to certain parts of our server.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.